The lasagna was cold again. I didn't even realize I was still making 2 plates until I reached for a second fork. That's how it's been, habits outlasting people. You spend years carving out space for someone in your life, and when they vanish, the space doesn't seal back up. It just echoes. She didn't slam the door when she left. She didn't scream or cry or even flinch. She just looked at me, eyes dry, voice calm, and said, "Daryl, I need space. I need to breathe." Like I was the one suffocating her. I nodded like a fool. Said I understood. Lied. I understood nothing. She packed in silence, folded her sweaters with the same precision as she used for our Christmas decorations. I remember thinking she looked peaceful. Not sad, peaceful. That was the part that tore something open in me. The day she left, she forgot her yoga mat and took both toothbrushes. She also left her phone logged into the kitchen tablet. I didn't even notice for 3 days. I was too busy convincing myself she'd call. Too busy refreshing our shared calendar like her return was just a pending event. But then the notifications started popping up, one after another. Text from a contact saved as June. I thought it was a girl at first. Then I saw a message that said, "Last night was electric. I can still taste you." I didn't eat for 48 hours after that. The man's name was Jonah. I know because he sent a selfie, shirtless, in our guest room. The one she used to say smelled like dust. I guess it smelled like excitement now. She wanted space? I gave her the whole damn universe. I stopped calling, stopped texting, stopped asking mutual friends about her. I took a transfer at work that moved me across state lines. I left everything behind, even the damn cat, because she always said he liked her more. And I waited to forget her. But she remembered me. And when the calls started coming, one night, then two, then every night like clockwork, I didn't know what to feel anymore. It wasn't guilt in her voice. It was regret. And I don't know what to do with that. The first voicemail was only 8 seconds long. I almost deleted it without listening. "Hey, it's me. I know you probably won't answer, but I..." Click. That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just hesitation wrapped in static. I wish I could say I didn't care. That I deleted it and moved on. But I didn't. I played it again. Then again. I turned the volume all the way up and just stared at the wall, trying to imagine the face behind the voice. Was she crying? Was she scared? Or was it just boredom? A moment of weakness at midnight when even liars start to feel lonely? I didn't answer. Not that night. Not the next one either. But they kept coming. By the 4th night, her voice started to break. She sounded different, smaller, less sure of herself. She said Jonah was not who she thought he was. That he was hot-headed and distant, and that he didn't know how to be gentle. I laughed. Out loud. First time I'd laughed in weeks. Gentle? That's what she missed? I was gentle. Too gentle. I was the guy who refilled her water bottle before bed, who ironed her work blouses at 6 in the morning, who let her roll her eyes at me every time I wanted to talk about our future, as if I was burdening her with love. But sure, now, suddenly, she remembered softness. Still, I didn't pick up. I told myself it was pride. But honestly, it was fear. Fear that if I heard her cry, I'd forgive her. And worse, I'd invite her back into the space she shattered. Then, one night, something changed. I got a call from Romy, her best friend. The same one she supposedly stayed with after leaving me. We hadn't spoken since the space began, and I assumed she was just as much in on the lie. But her voice? She sounded shaken. "Daryl, I don't know what Aloan told you, but she's not doing well. I found her sitting in the shower fully clothed last night. She won't eat. She keeps saying she ruined everything." I didn't know what to say. Romy kept talking, asking if I could call her. "Just talk. One conversation might help her," she said. But help her what? Sleep better? Sleep with someone else again? Still, something in me cracked. The same something that hadn't healed since I watched Aloan walk out our front door like I was some boring chapter she didn't care to finish. So I texted her. 2 words, "Why now?" No reply that night. Instead, the next evening, the longest message yet. 3 minutes. Her voice trembling. She talked about the hotel room. How she hated herself when she saw Jonah sleeping and realized she didn't feel anything. That she thought freedom would feel like flying, not falling. That every dinner with him felt like pretending to be someone she used to be. She said my absence was louder than his presence. That one hit. But still, I didn't respond. Because the truth is, I wasn't ignoring her out of strength. I was doing it because I didn't trust myself. Because if she knocked on my door, I might still open it. And I didn't know what was worse, letting her back in or knowing she'd leave again. But she doesn't knock. She just calls. Every night. And lately, I've started putting my phone face down, just like she used to. I wish I could say I was surprised when I opened the door and saw her standing there. But the truth is, I had been rehearsing it in my head for weeks. I pictured it like a movie, the look of guilt on her face, the rain behind her, some quiet music swelling in the background as I told her I'd moved on and shut the door in slow motion. But life doesn't give you background music, and I didn't move on. There was no rain either, just a cloudy sky and the sweater she used to wear on Saturdays when we ran errands together. A faded navy blue with stretched-out sleeves. The left cuff still had a tiny burn mark from when she leaned too close to the stove, trying to reach the salt. I stared at it longer than I should have. "Daryl," she said, voice barely a whisper. I stepped back automatically, and she took it as an invitation. Before I could even process what was happening, she was inside my apartment, hugging herself like she'd wandered in from a blizzard. I didn't offer her tea. I didn't offer a seat. I just stood there, frozen, while the ghost of my wife hovered near the coffee table like she used to. She didn't cry. That somehow made it worse. She just looked around slowly and said, "You didn't keep anything." Of course I didn't. I had donated her books, tossed her framed vision boards, sold the armchair she called her thinking spot. It all felt tainted. Like keeping any of it would be saying I was okay with how she left. "Where's the cat?" she asked. "Probably happier than I am," I replied. It was meant to be sarcastic. It came out as pathetic. She sat down anyway. No invitation. Just the quiet confidence of someone who assumed she still had a place. She started talking, saying she knew what she did was wrong, that Jonah turned out to be manipulative, jealous, and cold. That she realized too late the freedom she wanted was just an escape hatch, and that she never asked what she was running toward. I listened, arms crossed, but the words didn't land the way she expected. They weren't bandages. They were salt. "You told me you couldn't breathe," I finally said. "Now you're here asking for air again?" She looked away, picking at a thread on her jeans. "I miss home. You set fire to it." That got to her. Her lip trembled, but she didn't cry. Maybe she already ran out of tears with him. Maybe she thought I'd still play the caretaker, the fixer. But I was tired of being the one who swept up the pieces of choices I didn't make. Still, I asked the question I swore I wouldn't. "Why him?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" I leaned in. "Out of everyone. Why him? Why some tanned, shirtless guy in a hotel robe? Why not at least someone who understood you? Someone who read your stupid poetry books and listened to your long rants about palm oil and corporate ethics? Why someone who made you laugh like I was invisible?" She stared at me for what felt like a full minute. Then, quietly, "Because he wasn't you." I felt that in my ribs. She didn't mean it to be cruel, but it was. Maybe the cruelest thing she's ever said. Not because it was angry, but because it was honest. I don't even know what happened after that. I must have gone numb. All I remember is that she asked to stay, just for a few nights, until I figure things out. I told her I'd think about it. And now here I am, watching her sleep on my couch like nothing ever happened. She's curled up in that damn sweater, breathing softly, like she used to when we watched documentaries and she always fell asleep 20 minutes in. I should tell her to leave. I should be stronger than this. But instead, I'm still setting 2 plates at dinner and hating myself for it. The next morning was quiet. The kind of quiet that isn't peaceful, the kind that hums like static beneath your skin. I stood in the kitchen, pouring coffee for one, like I always do. But when I opened the drawer for a spoon, I paused. Her favorite one, the one with the bent handle she refused to throw away, was in there. I could have sworn I tossed it months ago. But there it was, crooked and stubborn, just like her. I didn't use it. I just stared at it like it was evidence. She woke up around 8 a.m., still wrapped in that old sweater, her hair a tangled mess of sleep and regret. She didn't say good morning, just rubbed her eyes and walked straight into the bathroom like she still lived here. No knock. No hesitation. I should have said something. I should have reminded her that this wasn't her home anymore. But I didn't. I just stood there, letting her take up space again, because deep down, and I hate myself for admitting this, it felt good to be remembered. Even if it was just out of convenience. When she came out, she looked at me like she was expecting something. A smile. How did you sleep? Maybe even a hug. I gave her none of it. Instead, I slid a mug across the counter without a word. She took it with both hands like it was a peace offering, but we both knew it wasn't. We sat in silence. She sipped. I stared at the wall. And finally, after what felt like an hour, she said, I don't want to lie anymore. I nearly laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd coming from her mouth, like a thief declaring they now believe in property rights. Still, I waited. Let her keep digging. It wasn't just Jonah, she said, looking down. There were others. Before him. Nothing long-term. Just attention. I told myself I deserved it. The air went thick. I swear I could hear the hum of the refrigerator behind us. That detail, others, rewired something in me. I always suspected she was emotionally drifting. But hearing it out loud was like learning your house had been slowly flooding from beneath the floorboards for years, and you were just too stupid to feel the wet carpet. I said nothing. I think I even stopped blinking. She must have taken my silence as acceptance, because she kept going. I felt invisible, Daryl. You were always there, but not really. You listened, but only halfway. You did things for me, but it felt like obligation, not passion. I needed to feel wanted. I clenched my fists under the table. Of course I did things out of obligation. That's what marriage becomes sometimes. It's not a romance novel. It's laundry, rent, dinner at 7, clogged drains, and pretending to care about her coworker drama even when I was dead inside. That was love. Showing up when it wasn't shiny. Staying when it got dull. But she wanted more. She wanted to feel like a movie again. I'm sorry, she said. And for a second, I believed her. Until I asked the question that had been killing me quietly for months. Would you still be here if Jonah hadn't ended it? That froze her. She didn't answer right away. Just stared into her coffee like she might find a better version of herself at the bottom of the cup. And then, in a voice so quiet I barely heard it. I don't know. That was the most honest thing she ever said to me. And it broke me worse than all the lies. After she left that afternoon, said she needed to clear her head, I sat alone in the apartment, surrounded by ghosts of a life I didn't know was fake. Every wall seemed to breathe with memories I didn't trust anymore. Our couch, our books, the tiny crack in the tile by the fridge where she once slipped in her socks and we laughed for hours, it all felt staged. What scared me most wasn't that she cheated. It was that I missed her anyway. And now that she was back, if only for a moment, I realized the worst truth of all. I never stopped loving the version of her that stopped existing long before she left. 2 days passed. She didn't leave, and I didn't ask her to. I told myself it was just temporary, that I was gathering the emotional strength to tell her to go. But the truth was, I was stalling. Not because I wanted her to stay, but because I was terrified of being alone again. I hated her for what she did, but I hated the silence more. The thing is, when someone's been part of your every routine, their absence becomes a phantom limb. Even when you know they poisoned you, you still feel their touch in the dark. She'd started cleaning the kitchen like old times. Rearranged my spice rack, like she used to. Changed the bedsheets unasked. Left her hairbrush on the sink again, as if reclaiming a forgotten kingdom one small item at a time. I should have said something. I should have told her this wasn't her home anymore. But instead, I let her sit across from me at dinner like nothing had happened. We didn't talk about the affair. Not again. It was like we had placed that in a drawer neither of us wanted to open. Just knowing it was there was enough. But on the third night, everything changed. We were watching a documentary. Something about vanishing villages in Alaska. She'd curled up on the edge of the couch, a blanket tucked around her legs. I sat stiffly in the opposite corner, arms crossed. We weren't touching. We hadn't touched since she walked back in. At some point, I dozed off. When I woke up, maybe 1 or 2 a.m., the TV was still flickering, but Aloan was sitting on the floor near the bookshelf, hugging her knees. I thought she was crying at first, but she was staring straight ahead, completely still. Aloan, I mumbled. She didn't answer. I sat up. What's wrong? She turned her head slowly. Her eyes weren't red. She wasn't crying, but something about her face scared me. Like a mirror that suddenly shows someone else's reflection. I have to tell you something, she whispered. I braced myself. Another man? Another lie? No. It was worse, because it was about something that happened years ago. Something she had buried so deeply, it never even made it into our arguments. You remember the miscarriage, she said. Her voice barely reached me. The one, 6 years ago. I nodded, instantly sick. I hadn't thought about that in a long time. It was one of the few things that truly broke us back then. We were both devastated. We cried together for weeks. Or at least, I thought we did. She looked down at her hands and exhaled through her nose. I lied. My skin went cold. What do you mean? She stared into nothing. It wasn't a miscarriage. I ended it. I didn't tell you. I let you believe it just happened. The room tilted. My ears rang. I was scared, she said. Not of being a mom, of being stuck. Of disappearing into that life before I was ready. You were already painting nurseries in your head. I couldn't breathe. So I made the appointment. And I never told you. I didn't speak. Couldn't. The couch might as well have been sinking into the floor. She kept talking, quietly, like it was a confessional she'd rehearsed 100 times. You cried every night. And I watched you. I watched you grieve a child you thought fate took from us. But it wasn't fate. It was me. I let you carry the pain, so I wouldn't have to explain mine. She finally turned to face me fully. I know it's unforgivable. I know I killed something you loved. But I couldn't keep it hidden anymore. I stood up, dizzy, heart pounding in my throat. The walls felt too close. The air was thick. I stumbled into the bathroom and locked the door without saying a word. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat on the edge of the tub and stared at my own knees for half an hour. That child had been real to me. I had named them in my head. I had seen cribs in store windows and wondered what color their eyes would be. And all along, Aloan had let me carry a loss that wasn't mine to carry alone. I remembered holding her after it happened. I remembered the way she trembled in my arms, whispering, I'm sorry, over and over. Now I understood why it never sounded like she was apologizing to herself. The next morning, she was gone. Just like that. No note. No suitcase. Just vanished. But the worst part? She left her phone. And when it lit up with a new message, I almost didn't look. But I did. And the name on the screen wasn't Jonah. It was someone I'd never heard of. And what they wrote. Tell him before I do. I didn't touch the phone for almost an hour. I just stared at the screen as it dimmed, lit up, then dimmed again, like it was breathing. Tell him before I do. That message sat on the lock screen like a landmine, daring me to press it. The name on top was just a first name, Casey. No last initial. No photo. Just Casey. I picked it up finally. My fingers were shaking, not because I was afraid of the truth, but because part of me already knew there was more. That the affair, the lies, the erased child, they were just the tip of a story that had been unraveling behind my back for years. I unlocked the phone. Casey had messaged her before. Dozens of times. The thread stretched back at least 8 months. And what shocked me most wasn't the content, it was the tone. It was warm. Familiar. There were no romantic emojis, no sexting, nothing like what she had with Jonah. This was different. It was intimate in a way that made my stomach churn. One message from 3 months ago stood out. He still doesn't know, huh? You're going to have to deal with it sooner or later. And another, a few days before she came back. I told you I'd give you time, but if you're under his roof again, he has a right to know. You can't keep him in the dark forever. I scrolled faster, looking for anything. A clue. A profession. A photo. Something that would tell me who Casey was and why they thought they had a stake in my marriage. And then I saw it. A PDF attachment titled, Authorization Form. Dr. Casey Monroe. Doctor. I opened the message. It was a scanned copy of a document Aloan had signed. A medical release form. My eyes moved too fast to take in everything, but one line stopped me cold. Patient name, Aloan V. Monroe. Procedure, genetic carrier consultation / pre-IVF screening. Emergency contact, Daryl Whitmore, do not disclose until cleared. IVF? I blinked, trying to make sense of what I was reading. We never even talked about IVF. After the miscarriage, or what I thought was a miscarriage, Aloan said she wasn't ready to try again. She shut that door hard, said she couldn't go through it again, that it broke her. And now here I was, staring at a consultation form with her name on it, dated just 5 months ago. But that wasn't the part that made my knees buckle. The final message from Casey, sent just 2 hours before she showed up on my couch again, read, You told me he deserved the truth. If you're too scared to say it, I'm not. He should know the child is his. I dropped the phone. For a second, I thought I'd misread it. That it was metaphorical. That child meant some kind of hope or grief or poetry. But I knew better. I went back into the message thread, slower now, and found it, the one that confirmed everything. You said the embryo was non-viable. That was a lie. You carried it to term. You had the baby. And you gave it up. I sat on the floor, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the apartment, as I tried to stay upright. She had a baby. My baby. She never told me. She let me believe it was over, that the pregnancy ended years ago, that the chapter closed with a funeral of something that never lived. But it had lived. It had grown, been born, and then, what? She gave it away? Was it adoption? Surrogacy? A private arrangement? I felt like I was dissolving. Like the person I thought I was, husband, maybe father, maybe not, was being erased in real time. I texted Casey. Who are you? Read. No reply. I called the number. Voicemail. I left a message. I don't even remember what I said. Something desperate. Something angry. Maybe both. Then I threw the phone across the room and sat in the dark with a million questions tearing through my skull like gunfire. Where was the child now? Boy or girl? Healthy? Do they know I exist? Why did she lie? Why didn't she let me be a father? That night I didn't sleep. I barely moved. I just stared out the window as cars passed like nothing was broken. The world outside didn't know or care that I had lost something twice. First when she said she miscarried. Then when I realized I'd never held my child at all. She didn't come back the next day, or the next. But on the third morning, I heard a knock. It wasn't Aloan. It was a young woman, mid-20s, nervous eyes, holding a folder. Her voice cracked as she said, "Are you Daryl Whitmore? I think you're my biological father." I didn't answer right away. I just stood there, frozen in the doorway, blinking like I hadn't heard her correctly. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, holding that folder like it was a shield between us. "I'm sorry," she said. "This was probably a bad idea." She turned to leave. "No, wait." The words came out strangled, like I had to drag them past something heavy lodged in my throat. She paused, shoulders tense. She didn't look back. I stepped aside and opened the door wider. "Come in." She hesitated, then crossed the threshold like she was stepping into sacred ground. And in some ways, she was. The space still smelled faintly of Aloan's shampoo, and here this girl was, a stranger and not a stranger, carrying years of my life that I didn't know existed. We sat across from each other at the table. The same one where I had eaten thousands of meals beside a woman who apparently kept this secret buried so deep it had a pulse. She introduced herself as Claire. No last name. Just Claire. She said she'd grown up believing she was adopted. Private. Closed. Her parents were loving but vague. She always knew she was different. Something about birthdays made her anxious. Something about family trees made her cry in school when other kids wrote Mom and Dad without asterisks. Then, a year ago, her mother got sick. Terminal. In a morphine haze, she confessed the truth. Claire wasn't just adopted, she was placed. Quietly. Privately. Aloan had come to the clinic alone. No father listed. Paid in cash. No follow-up. Claire spent months searching. DNA tests. Online databases. Threads on private forums. She'd hired someone eventually, someone named Casey Monroe, who helped trace the path back to one name, Daryl Whitmore. Me. I was barely breathing. Everything she said sounded distant, like it was echoing through a tunnel too long to reach me. I must have asked a dozen useless questions. How old are you? Do you know where she went after? Why didn't she keep you? Claire answered them all, softly, respectfully, but with a sort of resolve I didn't recognize. She had lived her entire life wondering why she didn't belong. Now she had a name, a face, a connection to someone who hadn't even known to miss her. When she opened the folder, she slid it across the table without a word. Inside was a printed ancestry report. My name was there. DNA confirmation. High confidence match. Biological father, 99.9999%. There was also a photo of her as a baby, a grainy Polaroid, Aloan's handwriting on the back. It said 6 days old, Claire. I excused myself and locked the bathroom door again. It was becoming a theme, hiding in silence, trying not to fall apart in front of the people who deserved answers I didn't have. I splashed cold water on my face. What was I supposed to say? Welcome to the family I didn't know you were stolen from? Sorry I wasn't there for the lullabies, the first tooth, the scraped knees, the college tuition? I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize myself. When I came back out, she was still seated, polite, composed, but visibly bracing for rejection. "I didn't come here to ruin anything," she said. I needed to look you in the eyes once." I sat across from her again, palms pressed flat to the table. "You didn't ruin anything, Claire. That happened a long time ago." She smiled barely and said she'd go, that she had a train to catch. I told her she didn't have to, that we could talk, that I wanted to talk. And that's when she said something that shattered me all over again. "Aloan knew I was looking for you. She made me promise not to find you until she could prepare you. But when she found out I talked to Casey, she panicked. That's probably why she showed up at your place." I stared at her. She told you that? She called me crying 2 days ago. Said she had to fix it before you hated her forever. I couldn't help it. I laughed. But it wasn't funny. It was bitter. Cold. Empty. Hate her forever? That ship left the harbor a long time ago. Claire stood. She didn't ask for a hug. Didn't reach for one. She just nodded, then walked to the door. Before she left, she turned back and said, "I hope one day you'll be glad I found you." And then she was gone. I sat there for hours, her folders still open on the table, the Polaroid staring up at me like a tiny ghost. I wanted to believe this was all some elaborate mistake. But the eyes in that photo, they were hers. And the jawline? It was mine. Later that night, my phone lit up again. Eloan. I answered this time. The silence on the line was deafening. Then finally, her voice shaking, broken, but clear. "I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want you to see me like this. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I said one thing. Come get your daughter's photo off my table. I'm done keeping pieces of you." Eloan didn't come the next day, or the one after that. I expected another call, another apology, another string of explanations. But for once, there was silence. And it was peaceful. Not the empty kind that used to haunt me when she left the first time. This was clean, fresh, like breathing after being underwater for too long. Claire texted me on a Thursday afternoon. Nothing heavy, just a meme about bad coffee and a message that said, "Thinking of you today." No pressure. That girl, she had no idea how deeply those 4 words cut into the walls I'd spent years building around myself. I stared at the message for almost an hour before replying. "Thanks. Maybe lunch sometime?" She said yes. We met up the following week. I was nervous, more nervous than I'd ever been for anything in my life. I even changed my shirt twice before leaving the house. When I got to the cafe, she was already there, waving with this half-smile like we were just 2 old friends catching up, not a man meeting his daughter for the first time. We talked for 3 hours. She told me about her childhood, the art degree she almost finished, the 3-year relationship that ended in a mutual shrug. She loved photography. She hated olives. She preferred dogs to cats but had none of either. She was whip-smart and thoughtful. And she had this quiet strength, like someone who'd built herself out of pieces no one thought could fit. When she asked about me, I was honest. I told her about the job, the failed dreams, the pain. I didn't paint myself as the hero. I told her I had spent years convincing myself I was someone worth loving, even when the person closest to me kept quietly choosing everyone else. She listened. Really listened. And when I told her I was scared of doing this wrong, of being a disappointment, of being too late, she reached across the table, touched my hand, and said, "You didn't miss everything. You're here now." That night, I went home and stood in the living room, staring at all the empty corners that used to echo with Eloan's presence. But this time, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel grief. I felt free. She texted one final time a few days later. "I saw Claire. She told me you were kind. I'm glad. You're a good man, Daryl. I just couldn't see it clearly until it was too late. I'll stop calling now. I promise." I didn't reply. Not out of hatred, but because the story between us was finally over. And not every chapter needs a closing line. Instead, I focused on the one just beginning. Claire and I started small coffee, walks, long messages. No pressure. No pretending. Just 2 people learning what connection could look like when it wasn't built on lies. She introduced me to her favorite bookstore. I helped her move into a new place across town. She came to one of my work cookouts, awkward but smiling, and I caught myself thinking, this is what life can be. Sometimes we talk about what-ifs. About Eloan. About the silence that stole years from both of us. But mostly, we talk about the now. And the future. There's no fairy tale ending here. No instant family photo on the mantle. No sudden burst of healing that erases the scars. But there's laughter now. Real laughter. And that's something I hadn't heard in a long, long time. The woman who said she needed space? She got it. And in giving it to her, I finally found mine. Not the kind filled with echoes, but with something real. Something hopeful. Something alive.